This is the Seven Figure Standard Podcast, hosted by Arash Vossoughi and Mykie Stiller, with mindset and strategies to help you break through and create personal freedom.
Hello, and welcome back to the Seven Figure Standard Podcast. I'm Mykie Stiller, joined by my co-host, Arash Vossoughi, and we are so happy to be here with you today, where we are going to talk about how quitting is a habit and so is winning. I am so excited to talk about this topic, Arash. I know you are too. We've, of course, talked a lot about winning, the strategies to winning, the processes and principles around winning on the podcast. We haven't spent a lot of time talking about quitting, so let's dive right into this subject. What are your initial thoughts?
Well, I used to be a great quitter. That's my first thought. I used to quit all the time. I'd quit and accept lesser goals. But boy, was that a losing formula. It was an absolute losing formula. Most people are sabotaging themselves, and it's covered up in quitting. Oh, it didn't happen. They quit right before they're about to do it, or they're creating really great results, better than they've ever done, and then stop doing it. So quitting is such a bad habit, but every time you quit, it becomes easier to quit and easier to quit. And most people are not living to their capabilities of how they want to live because they're constantly quitting. And so we want to eliminate that. I was sharing this with our peak performer group. I said, winners live where quitters quit. Winners constantly monetize where people are quitting all the time. And if you look at who you admire, that you really think they're a great example of the life you want to live, what they're experiencing, the one commonality, those are the most consistent people in the world, and consistency always wins. So you have to set a standard that I'm never quitting. Now, in order to do that, let's say I'm talking to somebody who's a quitter right now. You've got to make the opposite, that I am constantly persisting. I never quit no matter what the result is. And there are some things we should quit at, though. Like if something is not serving us, I want you to quit. There's also like the law of polarity. There's an equal and opposite to everything. So there's certain habits we should quit. So I'm not saying never quit. What I'm saying is never quit on your dreams, regardless of the appearance.
A lot of times I feel like whenever someone goes to quit on their dreams or quit on their goal or quit, it's because things have gotten hard. Things have gotten uncomfortable. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, most people wilt when things get hard, when you deal with adversity. They wilt in adversity when we're getting tested the most. And once we pass that test, so much good starts showing into our life. And Listen, I watch it every day. I've been doing this for a long time. The people who win are the people who never quit. The people who win, then lose, and lose, and lose, and they never really win again is because they gave up on themselves. And it's really, for me, it's sad to watch. Mm-hmm. And because I know their identity blocked it, they just didn't do enough to change that identity. So that's why they're starting a business or starting a new thing. It doesn't have to be a business. And they start winning, and then instead of going deep enough to create it as part of who they are, they give in and they start a new idea. They lose focus. It's never been an easier time, Mike, in our world to win, but it's never been a greater time to be distracted. And I think distractions are going to keep really being in our face the way AI is being developed. Ever since social media, there's so many distractions in front of us. So one of the habits to win outside of not quitting is to develop great focus.
There's a story that our mentor, Bob Proctor, used to tell all the time about quitting. And I loved this story. It was one of my favorite stories he told. I would ask him to tell it frequently. And it was about, I'm just going to give you like the 20-second version. I'm not going to tell the story, but basically one of his sons wanted to quit the swim team because they had to wake up really early and he wouldn't make the decision, but he knew that they wanted him to make the decision to quit or not quit. And he said, do what you want to do. And then as they walked off, he said, next time you go to quit, it'll be even easier.
Yeah.
And that was the point you made at the beginning. Every time you quit, it gets a little bit easier and it becomes a little bit more of who you are, a little bit more of your standard, of your identity. And I want you to talk more about that because it's so important. When you make the decision not to quit, just as much as making the decision to quit, it becomes a part of who you are. It either builds you or it tears you down.
Well, why did I quit? Let's ask the question. Why do people quit? Because of belief, because of flimsy foundation, a flimsy identity. That's why they quit. And so I remember years ago, this is like when I was struggling. I've been working at this for 3 years. And one night, I just like emotionally was fed up, And I said to myself, you are the biggest fraud. And I really meant it. Like you keep telling people how you're going to live, you're going to do great things, yet you can't even be freaking congruent to your word. And I had this like come to Jesus moment with myself that I'm sick of starting and stopping. Like I was sick of it. And I said, I'm chasing the wrong thing. And I said, I'm going to chase greatness. And I didn't know what that meant at the time, but I was just like, I was constantly chasing the outside. I was doing way too many things, right? And so I was constantly quitting. And a couple of weeks later, I lost my job. I still, to this day, believe that if I didn't have that conversation with myself of admitting I was being a fraud to myself, not being congruent with my word, I don't believe I would have bet on myself. I still believe that. But what did I do? I gave myself a direct order and I said, no more bullshit. Like go all in or go all out. It's one or the other, and so all of a sudden I stopped quitting. And, for the people who are quitting, they don't know how much damage they're doing to themselves. The people who procrastinate, they have no understanding of the damage they do to themselves. The thing is, you're always paying the price. You're either paying the price of staying the same or the price of change. We're always paying the price. When we procrastinate, we're paying the price. So every time we procrastinate, you understand we quit on ourselves. Mm-hmm. We quit on ourselves in that moment. But we have to do a great job of killing off our old self, not just covering it up. What I mean is not covering it up because you start making wins and say, oh, I'm there. Then you settle. Then you take the foot off the gas. You have to do it long enough where quitting is not even an option. You have to decide who you're going to be. Nothing happens until we decide who we're going to be. And most people are chasing awards. They're chasing income, but they're chasing the wrong thing. They got to chase their greatness. If you start chasing your greatness, quitting will never be an option. Like, who gives a shit how long it takes? I'm being pretty raw here, but like, who cares how long it takes? Like, we've all lost before. What's the big deal? You lose again. At least you lose playing to win and you lose persisting. So who we become always determines what we earn. Who we become determines our relationships. Who we become determines our confidence. So is it possible we're chasing the wrong rabbit? We're chasing these so-called outside accolades, but those are going to fulfill us for 1 minute. But who we become changes our character. And when our character changes, you're not driven by a result, good or bad. Results just become who you are because you become more. And you're going to only have the expectation that I create great results. Like everything I touch is excellence. But when we quit and we say the market, we just gave all our power away. I'm not saying different times in my life the market hasn't changed, but that's none of my business. I can't control that. But I can control whether I quit or not. I can control my energy. I can control my passion. I can control putting heart into it. The person who loses the most is the person who has no goals. They have no wants. They don't even know why they're doing what they're doing or why they quit. They quit because They had adversity. It got hard. Instead of persisting through the hard, they gave up on themselves. Guess what? The next time it's going to be much easier to give up on yourself. And then they live a very mundane life. That's what happens with quitters.
And so I've got a question for you. Let's say someone's gotten comfortable with quitting. They've quit on themselves in the past. It's not a foreign term to themselves. And they're listening to this. How do they turn it around?
They have to decide who they want to be. Just like I did. I had to decide who I wanted to be. Did I want to just get by? Or did I want to create a life for my family and myself that I was going to be proud of? So they have to decide. Okay. People are not losing by accident. They're losing by design. People are not winning by accident. They're winning by design. It's always mindset. Our greatest responsibility is how we think. Nobody can control how you and I think. Nobody can get me to quit anything. The only person who can get me to quit is me. And do you know, when I decided to be excellent, that was when my life really started. That was when my life really had meaning and had purpose behind it. But, you know, the funny thing is I can look back now and look at a lot of things. God, my risk-taking muscle really increased. Like, I'm always like, it's going to work out. It's always going to work out. Now, you have to deal with that part of me. But, you know, I always think everything's going to work in my favor. Well, because I don't know how else other to think. I'm wired like that now. Now, I didn't. It used to be wired like that. I used to be skeptical. And God, that was a losing formula. Do you know when we're skeptical, we quit? Why are we skeptical? Because we need to see the evidence before we see the results. That's why people are quitting. They don't see the results, so they quit, but they don't understand. They haven't persisted long enough so the seed can grow, so they can attract what is necessary for the fulfillment of their achievement or of their desire. So we got to make a standard, Mike. For everybody listening to this, you got to decide today, no more quitting. If you're quitting the little things, you're going to quit the big things. So stop quitting the little things first.
You know, I was recently listening to a lesson and they're talking about how we're all so pragmatic now. We're also, well, show me the proof and then I'll believe it. And I think this goes to what you were just talking about. Where's the faith in being so pragmatic? Like, where is the leap of faith in yourself and in your dreams? If you want to say prove it first, and how far can you really get if you're saying prove it to me first?
The only thing that is guaranteed is what we decide to become. That's the only thing that's guaranteed. We're not guaranteed, you know, if we're going to wake up in the morning. We're not guaranteed we can do all the right things, but we can't control the uncontrollable. We just got to keep stacking them. But let me ask you a different question. Okay, this goes into this, what we're talking about. Do you know how much it costs someone not to become the best version of themselves? You know, when I'm working with our team, I tell them this often. I said, why do you think I call you out? And they'll be like, because you want to make me better. That's not why I call them out. I call them out to call them up to ascension. And I want to introduce them to this best version of themselves they've never met. See, they don't see it like I see it. I'm ahead of them in awareness. And so if you have somebody in your corner calling you out, I would hug that person. You know, because very few people have those type of people in their corner because they see a greatness in you that you don't see in yourself. But don't personalize it, observe it, but they're just calling you up to what you say you want to be. So we've got to understand, when we don't invest in planting the right seeds every day, when we don't invest in the right actions, it is costing you so much money not becoming the best version of yourself. And all it is a few disciplines compounded over time. That's all it is.
That's such a great point you just made. And what a gift it is to have people who are holding you accountable to who you say you want to be and the dreams that you have, rather than someone who's going to support you in the smaller version of yourself. You mentioned at the beginning of the podcast that there are some things that you do want to quit. Obviously, there's vices that you want to quit. There's bad habits you want to quit. How do you do inventory on that and decide where things land?
Well, everything starts for me always with my goal. What do I need to let go of? I've got to quit the things that are not serving it. and you have to give an honest inventory. Just because it's comfortable, just because it creates pleasure, doesn't mean it's effective. See, our brain is wired to keep us safe. Our brain is wired for instant gratification. So what I always say is, what do I want the most? So delayed gratification is using our mind, not our brain, because our brain is wired for survival. Our mind is wired for us to thrive. So our mind can, whatever we give it, it will go out and work on. That's why whenever we consistently focus on a thing, we always get drawn to that thing. And so what we have to do is have a better understanding of us. See, I was saying this, I say this often to people I coach. And I said, if I'm looking at your business, tell me about your business. They know every detail about their business. Then I say, tell me about you. Do you understand you? It's like nothing. I said, you have to understand you but just as well as you understand your business. Actually, more. Like Jim Rohn had a great quote. He said, you have to work on your job more than you do. I'm sorry, I have it backwards. You have to work on yourself more than you do your job. Mm-hmm. And there's nothing more accurate than that. If we just take care of us and chase us, we're going to stop quitting. That's the key. We're chasing the wrong rabbit. Who we become is always what we attract. Relationships, income, business, whatever we become is what we earn.
Arash, let's get into an action step on this topic.
Stop freaking quitting. That's the action step. Stop quitting. Make a decision today. You're going to decide who you're going to become. Quitting is not a part of you. It's very simple.
I love that. Simple, to the point, very direct, very understandable. Any final words on this topic?
Go crush. Whenever you listen to this, I hope I got inside of you. And I want you to steal my mindset. If you're listening to our podcast, just keep listening over and over again. Steal my mindset. That's what I did with my mentor. Just steal it. Think like I think. Be bold. Go after what you really want and stop settling.
So good. Arash, thank you so much. And thanks to all of you. If you enjoyed today's episode, stop quitting, first of all, and then share this with your friends and family or on social media. And we'll see you next week for another episode of the 7 Figure Standard podcast.
Thank you for listening to this episode of 7 Figure Standard. We hope you found the insights and strategies helpful on your journey to success. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave us a rating and review on your favorite podcast platform to help us reach more people like you. To learn more about Arash and Mykie and how Voss Coach & Co. can help you achieve your goals and reach new levels of success, visit vosscoachandco.com. Thank you again for listening, and we'll see you on the next episode of 7 Figure Standard.